Good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We're your hosts for this week's conversation. I go by the Mindset Coach, also known as Dwayne Dwyer. I also have with me this evening, I have the Uncle Junior himself, Mr. BuildYourCreed.com, the Unc with the Funk. I also have a poor man's Dr. Phil, the man of many hats, not Roland Martin, again. You got Mr. Roland Walker. So below us, we have our two esteemed brothers. We got across the table with Mr. Chris McClellan. Chris McClellan, also known as Still the Angry Guy. And
Damn right.
we also have the son of Timothy himself, the available man, Tawana Gaddy. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this fine day?
I
I'm doing
am
great.
well. I'm
Doing
well.
great.
I
I'm
love it.
blessed, brother. Blessed.
Little headache, but I'm breathing. I'm good.
Little headache. I hear you, man. I hear you. Listen, man, I want to make sure that I give a shout out to everybody in the chats because they are here in live force already. So, welcome to the tonight's show. Good to see you, Cassandra McKenzie, Michelle Ray, Liz. Good to see you, Bernadette, MJ, Nikisha, Ravonda, Miss Charlotte Jordan. Always a pleasure to see you. Stephanie Henderson, the hardest working man, well, the hardest working woman in Central Texas. Good to see you. Listen, man, it is exciting to be with you guys again on another beautiful Saturday. Another beautiful Friday. Listen, I was kind of hurry up and getting to the point. If you guys are following the Masters, it kind of got postponed because there were two trees that fell in the midst of them playing. So it got suspended at 4 p.m. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. But again, just wanted to kind of put that out there. Tiger Woods is he's getting kind of close. Not sure if he's going to make the cut line, but who knows? We'll see how that works out. So again, welcome. Good to see you, Lisa Keys. And again, welcome to the show, man. Listen, if this is your first time joining us, go ahead and look in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. You'll see an icon. Put your cursor on it and then click on the subscribe button to fly out. Go ahead and click the notification button and share it as well, because I'm telling you, we have conversations that I believe that a lot of people will want to hear. Also, I want to make sure, get in the chat. Let us know that you're with us so that we can speak to you and lift you up, because that's what we enjoy doing. Now, as you already know, this is part two from last week, the four keys to knowing your self worth. And I think we kind of uncovered a lot of things last week. Bernadette Simmons, thank you so much. And if you don't know Bernadette Simmons, again, continuing to be a super supporter, we greatly appreciate you. Again, if you want to learn how to be a super supporter, look up under your chat window in YouTube, and you will see the square with the dollar sign in it. And again, we appreciate all that you do, and we find a way to give it right back to you as well. So thank you so much. So again, this is part two of the four keys to knowing your self worth. Now, I want to do a quick recap from last week because I think we uncovered a lot of things. Last week, doing last week conversations, and I think it's important because it kind of brings us up to speed to where we are today. So again, the four keys to knowing your self-worth. Last week, point number one was understanding the difference between worth and value. And again, we took our time with this one because we wanted to make sure that everybody got a clear depiction of the difference between worth and value. Just to make it simple, Kelly Blue Book would give you the value. But if my father gave me the truck and I've had it for years, Kelly Blue Book cannot tell me the worth. So just kind of keep that in mind. We also talked about inflated persona, right? So inflated persona, or a higher expectation of yourself, or a higher perception of yourself than what you really are. And the key here is that you try to elevate yourself above others. That's the most important part to remember there. Part two, key point two, was the self worth theory. And so remember, the self worth theory has four parts, right? You got ability, you have effort, you have performance, and then you have self worth. And ideally, the self worth theory says that effort will equate. If I put in a lot of effort into the thing, it will equate to my self worth, or my ability, my God given natural ability can equate to self worth as well, right? And then so that kind of takes us to the problem. And again, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about our hero Jack. Now, if you recall, our hero Jack, he kind of struggled with his feelings of self-doubt and insecurity. And he often felt like he didn't belong among his colleagues. Therefore, he experienced a lot of anxiety because he worked hard and tried to impress his boss. This is the self-worth theory. But no matter what, how much he accomplished, no matter what or how much he accomplished, he never felt like he was enough. As a result of this, when applying for the new position, Jack began to engage in self-sabotaging behaviors, staying up late at night, neglecting his health, telling himself that he needed to work harder to prepare for the promotion, and doubting his own abilities by questioning if he was really cut out for the job. Ultimately, he was distraught when learning that he did not get the promotion. That being said, enter cognitive dissonance theory. Now, I want to make sure this is clear before we move forward. Cognitive dissonance proposes that people are adverse to inconsistencies within their own mind. It offers one explanation for why people sometimes make an effort to adjust their thinking when their own thoughts, words, or behaviors seem to clash with each other. Simple example: when someone tells a lie and feels uncomfortable about it because he fundamentally sees himself as an honest person, this person may be experiencing what is known as cognitive dissonance. Cognition itself is just the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. Dissonance simply mean harmony. Therefore, when our behaviors aren't consistent with our perceptions of our worth, behavior or perceptions aren't in our perceptions, I'm sorry, aren't in harmony, and we may experience depression and or anxiety, among other things. This takes us to key point number 3: understanding which factors influence my self-worth. Now, the first point I want to bring to the table is our childhood experiences. Our early life experiences can shape our self worth. For instance, growing up in a supportive and nurturing environment can foster positive self esteem, while experiencing neglect or abuse can lead to low self worth. That being said, gentlemen, how did your childhood experiences help to shape your sense of self worth?
Hmm. Okay. Let me preface this before I say this. This isn't me putting anyone down or attacking anyone. This is me pulling myself out of the situation and looking at it for what it is. I didn't think I was worth anything but a check.
Mm.
Once the benefits from the state ran out, I immediately found out what everyone that I immediately found out what everyone who was under the same roof that I was on under thought about me. It's true what they say, man. Men, we're really not born with worth. We got to go find it. And we got to go get it. We got to go build it. We're not born with it. And I think that's why there's such a big push on men's improvement. You understand what I'm saying? Like the men are finally starting to come to the realization that we got to build something in order to feel like we're worth something. As far as self-worth goes, like I said, man, I didn't think I was worth anything but a bunch of benefits. And then when those benefits ran out, I found out that I really wasn't worth much to the people that I thought really cared about me the way that they were supposed to. So once I started removing myself from that, and I started doing things, and I started actually like I won 2 Chicago style stepping championships. You understand what I'm saying? Just because I knew that I could do something. You understand what I'm saying? I was in a couple plays. I was in a short film. I was in a web series. You understand what I'm saying? Like I figured out that I could do stuff outside of the people that I really thought were supposed to be the ones that were supposed to be supporting me the most. Not really showing me the type of support that I really needed to boost. You understand what I'm saying? And I think that's where self-worth comes into play for men. When we build something and we do something and we accomplish something, we like, all right, I can do this. And I don't need a bunch of people rooting me on. I just need a handful of people that can say, hey, you got this, keep going. You understand what I'm saying? So I'll just leave it at that.
My mom would tell you, Charlotte Jordan in the chat, she would tell you we spent plenty of hours in church growing up. A lot of my self-worth came from how I grew up. But let me say this at the same time. There was a lot of seeds planted growing up, especially when it came to my father. I think that he taught me a lot of things, and my mom, when it came to my self-worth and having some sort of self-worth about myself, including in the messages and different things that we got from church. However, what I did was, because my father was dealing with his own demons, I spent an early part of my young manhood, or teenage years, trying not to be him. So even though he was a good man at the core, because he was dealing with certain demons in his behavior, I dismissed all of those things, when it came to my self-worth and how to be, and the things that he may have taught me, or nuggets that he may have been dropping along the way. I just dismissed them and dismissed everything that was said. But as I grew up, and I started getting older, I started being able to pull back from those messages at church, those things that, my mom told me about, your value and your self-worth, those messages and different talks that I had with my father. It wasn't until I was older to where, those seeds that had been dropped when I was younger were finally able to blossom and to bloom into something valuable, or to something of importance, once I became an adult. So my sense of self-worth, it early on, because I negated the fact that my father was a good man because of his behavior, I didn't have a lot of self-worth, and I think it was just because I wasn't paying attention to the signs, you know what I mean, and the signals and the messages that they were telling me. So I think I know that it was all on me, but I think, like I said, maybe had my father not been dealing with those things, maybe those things would have stuck, and I would have a greater self-worth about myself at an earlier age versus later on in my life. So that's how mine childhood experiences shape my sense of self-worth.
I really want to ask a question there, but I think it's going to come out throughout the conversation. So I'm gonna hold off for now, and if it doesn't, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Whew. like like these two brothers, I would say early on, when we were with my mother and my father split when I was pretty young. So we did my father was still present in my life. So a lot of that is a blur, just for the simple fact that things just seemed normal, even when they weren't together. We was still able to go visit my father freely and stuff like that, him still being active. Um, then there was a shift around the age of 12 when we left my mother's house, or were taken from my mother and went to stay with my aunt for various reasons I think I shared before. Um, from then on, even early on in the military, I went through a lot of depression, a lot of battling mentally, things that were going on, a lot of, if I don't matter to the people, quote unquote, taking care of me, then do I matter? Thoughts of suicide and stuff like that. So my self-worth wasn't really built in my childhood. But growing up, uh the one thing that I did do is we went to church a lot. And I know that's bad English, right? But we went to church a lot growing up, and early on I gained a love for the scriptures and trying to understand the scriptures. That was a thing for me. And in doing that, uh, I found my self worth later on in life, and understanding that the Father had a message in His Word for me, and that's where I started to build myself. Um, even looking at other men around me and stuff like that. I would, take the good and the bad, but how do I line up what I'm trying to, or what I'm trying to be, or how I'm trying to see myself with this one thing that I did hold dear and true to me, which was the scriptures. And that was pretty much it, because I didn't get it from school. I wasn't the best basketball, football player. I wasn't the best ROTC guy. I was pretty good in art when it came to like drill and ceremony, but it it was a lot of having to search within myself. I couldn't look for my self-worth anywhere else because every human being up until recent years have let me down in my life. You know, and not let me down as if I needed something from them to live, but as far as what I expected for friends and family and loved ones to be to me. So I will pull myself out and receive nothing back. And I thought that was a knock at me. So I, now at 37, you couldn't tell me that I ain't great. I may not be great at one specific thing, but but because I learned to find myself in the scriptures, I'm great because I know who I serve. So and for everybody's different, so that's me. That's how my self-worth was shaped,
Man, I guess this question it's a good question that is kind of therapeutic at the same time. Because I think growing up, my experiences as a child developing self-worth was always attached to physical appearance because I grew up around a bunch of women. I mean, my mother, my auntie, my sisters, and, a bunch of women. And even outside of the home, and women always, as a little boy, they would pump your head up. Oh, you're going to be a cute baby maker. Oh, you're going to be this and you're going to be that. And I mean, we can joke about it now, but as a kid, that goes to your head. So now you grow up and you think, well, man, in a sense, all I may be worth is to be this and to do that. Oh, we want a baby by you because you got good hair and all that other stuff. And so now you grow up as a shallow person. You grow up as a person thinking that the only thing I have to offer is the physical nature of me. While on my father's side, my father would instill in me reading and thinking and that ability. That's why I always took it as an insult. When if anybody ever insulted my intelligence, it was like those are fighting words because I'm more than just this. I can actually think. So it was like a war going on where I'm like, okay, I'm not this average hood dude. I'm trying not to sound whatever. I'm not this below average looking person, but I'm not trying to dwell on that. So it was like a gift and a curse for me, where I hated for somebody to acknowledge that. But it was like, come on, I ain't this dude. And it was a whole battle for me, man. Because I'm like, okay, I'm trying not to be the pretty boy, like everybody. Oh, you the pretty boy. So that's why I boxed, because I'm trying not to be that. And I'm not the dumb jock, but I play sports. I'm trying not to be that. So it's like I didn't know who the heck I was. I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. But I didn't like other people's labels that they put on.
Man, I'm loving all these points, and I am really resonating with every last one of them. I want to, for me, it was a lot similar, but I didn't have the curly hair, and I didn't have the fair skin or the lighter complected side of the house. But I was actually pretty good at sports. Um, but it wasn't that I pursued sports as though it was my way out. I think for me, I kind of pursued sports as just a way to settle my mind, just simply because when I'm on the football field, it's like I felt like I was in power because I could run pretty fast, I could catch, I can do all those things. Um, But yet, hearing those things that you got to be twice as good, you got to be twice as smart, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I even experienced some of that because I did split option when I came in the military. So I went to basic training in between my 11th and 12th grade year. So when I came back to school, I went to spring practice, and I mean, I played the year before, and I went to basic training. All we did was run. And then I was told, like, well, you got to run. And it's this huge hill on the backside. You got to run like 350 hills to make up for the time that you missed. I'm like, the time that I missed. So, I mean, it was just a number of different things. And so when we look at all of these underlying messages, it equates to me looking at life through the lens of the things that I can't do, as opposed to looking at life through the lens of there's nothing that I can do. And unfortunately, it kind of gets you started off in life as though you have a handicap. You can't do that. You're not supposed to do that. You should not. You can't get this job, but these people can get that job. You can't do this, right? You think too high in the clouds. Like, these are some of the things that I was hearing. And fortunately, it wasn't coming from my mom. It was just other outside influences to where you hear that from. And it was kind of frustrating, especially, growing up in the South, young man trying to figure this thing out called life. And then you got girls, and then you got books. And you kind of, I don't know why, it's just kind of like a toss up. It's like, you can't be interested in girls and be good at books at the same time. Like, why not? You know what I'm saying? Why not? So it's a number of different things that facet in it. And then when brother Timothy mentioned it, we used to go to church every Sunday, but it wasn't that we went to church for me to learn. It was that I went to church because I was supposed to go to church. To be honest with you, the best part of me going to church at that point in time was leaving. That was it. Because by the time I leave, the
It
game is
wasn't a
coming.
choice.
It wasn't a choice.
It was
Right.
something that they forced you to do because it was something that you did in the house. That's why there aren't really a lot of men in the church right now, because it's not a choice. It wasn't a choice back then. You were forced to go. You were forced to go to Bible study on Wednesday night. You were forced to go to church on a Sunday at 11 o'clock and stay there until everybody left. It wasn't a choice. You wasn't there to learn. You was there because your mama told you you supposed to go. Let me stop. I
went twice.
said I wasn't going to do this today. I said I wasn't going to do this.
I mean-
I'm gonna stop.
man.
I went twice on Sunday.
I mean, yeah, most of us did, but let's be honest, right? Because we can't be disingenuous in that one aspect, because no matter what culture or religion you grew up in, you went where mommy and daddy went, whoever house you lived in, But for me, I think it's mostly, you can't be in church shouting the floors away in front of your kids, and at home cussing up a storm, ready to fight everybody, and you just the nastiest person they see, but you dragging them to the church. Like, I think really that's the problem, because there's no evidence to them that book works, because they're not seeing it in you. But I'm gonna leave that alone. I just wanted to put some clarity on that, because though that's true, and no matter what we do, because if mama went anywhere, unless she had a babysitter, you went. That's just what it was. And church was that thing that we resent, but we really resent it because the evidence wasn't at home.
For me, and just being clear, I resented it because I didn't want to go. That was it. I can't even say the evidence. I just didn't want to go. I'm just going to be completely transparent. That's all it was. I wasn't at the place to where I can look at what the Bible says and look at the people in my house and see where they were measuring up. I just didn't want to be there. But on the other side of that equation, I'm glad I was forced to go, because the other side of that, for me, it made me consider some things then that came back to me as I got older. That's the other piece for me. So even though I didn't want to go, I'm glad she took me because I needed to go. Right. And you got to realize that she was a single mom trying to raise a knucklehead. You know what I'm saying? And then 7 years later come my sister. Then 7 years after her come my other sister. So that's the spread between us. So at a certain point, I kind of became like that, that child that took care of his siblings. And again, I kind of appreciate the way she did things, even though I didn't want to go to church. I knew I had to go. And then eventually, it is what it is. But like I said, as I got older, I found myself going back to the church voluntarily. Yeah, I admit I didn't want to go then, but that's okay. Um, and so when I look at how my childhood experiences shaped my sense of self-worth, it was skewed because I had no idea what my self-worth was back then. In fact, I'll be transparent. I was stuck in the mindset, and I think somebody put it in the chat already. I was stuck in the mindset that I was only valued by what I would do. That's it. So if I wasn't doing anything, I wasn't valuable. And that's the wrong perspective simply because my self-worth, again, Kelly's Blue Book value is all about value, not worth. Whatever that vehicle is, it's probably has an intrinsic value to the person that's selling it that far supersedes the Kelly Blue Book value. But because they need to sell it at this particular point in time, they're going to sell it according to what Kelly say they need to sell it. And I think it's important to look at it from that perspective. Um, Ronnie, you look like you're stroking your beard, but I thought you had something you wanted to say. Get that? Okay. Let me see. So Lisa said, I believe my self-worth was viewed task-based because if I accomplished a task that added value to me. Absolutely. Kind of like what I was saying there. It wasn't a choice, but I think, yep, absolutely. So Liz says, I didn't grow up with my father, and my stepfather was an incomer who wasn't my father. My self-worth is based on being a daughter of the king. Otherwise, I'm numb. Yep, I agree 100%. Michelle said, being a Chicago native, I was told I wasn't going to achieve anything great, but God said otherwise. I followed my father's footsteps and served my country, and I achieved a plethora of goals. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great example of how a parent can shape an understanding on helping the child do something, right? Until you have a good understanding of who you are, just keep moving forward and you'll figure it out over time. Let's see. Cassandra said it wasn't a choice for me. Every time the doors was open, I was there. She's talking about church. I got you. I agree with you. I think Cassandra, you said your parents. I think your father was a preacher as well. So that kind of goes along with Uncle Junior's story. Michelle said, and yet still striving. I didn't have a choice. I was pushed out the house at 18 in Panama, and the military changed me. Absolutely. Thank you guys for sharing that. And listen, I want to make sure that I go back and catch everybody because I greatly appreciate all you guys have done. Miss Teresa Austin, Cassandra, and Lisa. I seen you. I put it in the chat, but I want to make sure I acknowledge you verbally as well. So thank you guys for being super supporters as always. Now, moving forward, because I think as you hear our explanation on how did your childhood experiences shape your sense of self-worth, I think it's easy to understand that growing from that perspective, we went through several bouts of dissonance, inharmonious thoughts based upon who we are and what we're doing. Simply because in some instances we probably over embellished our self-worth by thinking we were more than some other people. And by that same token, the other side of the coin is that we probably didn't think didn't think a lot about ourselves simply because based upon societal norms and things of that nature, we didn't feel valued. So speaking of which, the other 3 points I want to kind of run through real quick. You have social comparison. That's point number 2. Media and societal messages. And point number 4 is personal achievements and setbacks. Now, when it comes to social comparison, we often compare ourselves to others, especially those we are in similar situations. Comparing ourselves unfavorably to others can lower our self-worth, while favorable comparisons can boost them. Point number 3, media and societal messages. The media and societal messages can impact our self-worth by promoting certain beauty standards, social status, and other ideas that can lead to feeling of inadequacy or unworthiness. And point number 4, personal achievements and setbacks. Our personal achievements and setbacks can affect our self-worth. Successes can boost our self-worth, while failures can lower them. With that being said, gentlemen, how do social comparisons, media, social messaging, and personal achievements shape an individual's sense of self-worth?
I think when used properly, it can be very effective. And here's what I mean by this. The comparison, I get it. I understand it. I think on a daily basis, a lot of people spend a lot of time comparison. I think comparison is okay depending on what you're looking at to be the outcome. And what I mean by that is this. So I follow a guy named David Goggins, right? He's considered one of
The
like the
most
hardest guy on
mentally
earth.
tough dude I've ever seen in my life, but he is a nutcase sometimes.
Exactly. So I like it. He's very dialed in. He's very direct. He's run 240 miles, Navy SEAL, all these different types of things. So it's not that I want to be like him, and it's not that I compare myself to him, but at the same time I do. But I compare myself as to something that I want to achieve or like aim towards as a goal, not to compare myself. So I'm looking at him as a comparison, but not a comparison at the same time. I like his values. I like his work ethic. Those are things that I want to get better at. And he, in my book, is one of those guys who performs at a high level on that era, in that era, or in that not era, in that genre or in that space. So I compare myself to him and I look at myself and I look at him, not as, like I said, not to be like him, but what could I learn from this guy? What drives him? What did he learn in order for him to be as successful in what he did? And then let me grab on and to learn some of the things that he learned. So I know we can easily go the other directions. So I wanted to start it off going this way first. But I definitely got a whole lot to say about it going the opposite direction as well when that time comes back around.
So real quick,
See,
just out of curiosity, how
Mhm.
did you choose David Goggins? Just out of curiosity.
A lot of it had to do with, I think, by me being in the military and just cussing and stuff like that, just being real. I like Eric Thomas and I like David Goggins, but it's just his work ethic and like direct approach. Like, I don't need coddling. You know what I mean? I'm 47 years old. I don't need you to coddle me about what I need to get done. I need you to say, look, this what need to get done, A, B, C, or D. You ain't got no excuses. I'm 47. I ain't got another 47 years to live. So I ain't got 47 years to figure it out. So I like that type of approach where it's very direct, no nonsense. And that's just what I just tended to gravitate towards.
and the thing about men like him and men on his side of the sphere is that he makes it human. Like, and that's the side of the social comparisons and the media and all of that that's missing. I've heard interviews of that man saying how difficult it is for him to lace his sneakers up on days that he does not want to get up and go running, on days that he does not want to go to the gym, on days he does not want to go do the things that he needs to do to accomplish the goals that he has set out. But he gets up off of his ass, he puts his sneakers on, and he goes to do it anyway. He lets you know that you're going to have days like that. The whole mainstream media, social media thing shows one glamorous, perfect, I'd have no bad days sides of it. And that's the part of it that's making people think that either they not doing enough or they not worth enough, because they see people on all of these outlets having perfect lives and they know that it ain't like that. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I'm glad Unc brought up David and Unc brought up ET, because they'll tell you there are days where you're not going to feel like doing this, but you got to do it anyway. And the fact that you do it anyway builds your self-worth, because you know you can do it even on days where you don't even feel like it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that even a lot of the information that is grasped from social media or the messaging, people tend to compare themselves to the raw data without necessarily understanding the information that exists behind the scenes.
Listen, man, I used to do credit repair in my city. A lot of the cats that's in this city that's flossing like they got it, they don't got it. I'm going to keep it a buck. But they put the facade out there that they do. And a lot of people everywhere, because they see this, they compare their lives to the facade of social media to show the 100% perfect side of it, and not the side where they got to dig themselves out of this rut to get there. You understand what I'm saying? I really wish people showed the grind, because the grind is really where you build your self-worth, because you show yourself that you can do whatever you want to, as long as you put your mind to it and cut out anybody that's telling you you can't do it because they can't see themselves doing it. All right, let me shut up.
Ooh. if I'm understanding, because the way I'm reading the question is how. So I'm attacked that way more than the effects. Because so I think that's a different conversation, but how it affects your sense of self-worth is if you focus a lot of your attention on what you see in the media or social media or whatever platforms you love to read or watch videos or whatever the case may be, whether it's live TV or whether it's movies, your self-worth is really shaped based upon someone else's opinion or narrative of who you are or what you should be or what you should like, based upon your geographical location or based upon your ethnicity or background, right? Because a lot of times people you see a lot of posts, the starter kit for being a New Yorker, and they'll have a North Face, Timberlands, and the Yankee fitted. So people who don't like those things, after a while, if you see 100 likes and a bunch of people laughing, you might start thinking, shoot, am I really a New Yorker? I need to get me a fitted. I need to get me some Tims. I need to get me a North. And
It is
no
true.
one, I mean, don't come for us, right? No, sorry. I mean, it might be some truth to it, but I can't hold my self-worth or my value as a New Yorker based on that, because I live in Texas. So what am I going to do with Tim's and the North Face? You feel what I'm saying? Like, so that's just how I feel about it. So I just believe that you have to have a limit to what you absorb from social media or from YouTube or from movies or whatever the case may be. And that's why it's important to spend time absorbing knowledge, reading about some things you're interested in, reading about some things that you are striving to get into, and so that you can focus on where you're trying to go and not what other people say you should be. That's my take.
You know, I hate when people say this statement. They say, "Can I be honest with you?" It means like, well, what the heck? Were you lying to me the whole time before that? But to be honest, the social comparison, Detroit. I'm from a city where the social comparison thing runs rampant from a negative slant, because if somebody asks you if you're from Detroit and you can't really give them an answer, or you give them some crazy answer, you don't say like, no, I'm from any of the miles if after 8 Mile. It's like we look at it as a negative, because I can tell you I'm from the North End between Highland Park and the Boulevard, and then people gonna know that my circumstances were crap simply by me telling you where I'm from. And we want to show you that I lived in a crappier place than you, that my upbringing was hard, that everything about my life was hard. And we promote that, and we also promote a victim mentality. So now when you promote that victim mentality and Detroit versus everybody, I had to overcome this and I had to overcome that, some of it can be good, but a lot of it is bad, because I used to pump up, hey, it's murder mitten. We the murder capital of the world. And even when I was involved in it, that's what we did. So if you come over here, that's what you're going to get. And we promoted negativity and we promoted these things. And the social comparisons is when people would come from Chicago, Cleveland, St. Louis, Jersey, New York, wherever, it was like we want to prove who was the hardest. So those social comparisons can instill a sense of self-worth in the person that I'm proud to be from this negative environment because it made me able to take anything.
I see what you did, sir. I like that. I like that because yeah, I can actually relate to that. I mean, I mean, in thinking about it, man, like throughout my adolescent years, that's what you've heard. Like people kind of, it's almost like bragging about where you from because knowing where that person is from, it's hard there. It's difficult. So I like your approach to that one. Um, for me, I'm just going to look at it for what it is. How do social comparisons, um, you know, shape an individual self-worth? Well, it's easy to look at it from the perspective of, like Uncle Junior said. Well, I mean, now it's not easy. Let me back up. Especially where you know when you look at your upbringing, things of that nature, it's not easy to look at someone else achieving, and then you kind of compare yourself and be like, okay, well, if they did it, I can do it. It's That's a very difficult thing depending upon where you came from, especially when you look at what Roland just said. That makes a lot of sense. But the easy thing is to look at what somebody else has achieved and think of yourself as being less fortunate. I didn't have the opportunities that this person have. I was not in the right place at the right time. I didn't get a chance to meet these people, so forth and so on. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Media and social messaging. I think, and somebody, I think Liz put it in the chat. I can't remember. But it's one of those things to where you will get some of anything you want to see on social media. And it is a facade. Chris said it perfectly. It is a facade. It is not the reality aspect. It's not their reality. It's really you getting the highlight reels of that person's life within 30 to 45 seconds. That's it. I can show you, listen, if you give me
It's like
30 to
you watching
45
the
seconds,
sports center of their life.
right. I can make you believe I'm a millionaire in 30 to 45 seconds. But what you need to do is see me for the other 23 hours and 15. 23 hours what is it? 23 hours and 59 minutes and 15 seconds. That's what you really need to see. When you follow a person around long enough, then you will realize that hey, they're only giving you the best version of them. Do not buy into it. If they're giving information, take the information as raw data. That's it. But when you start looking at it and say, oh man, they're doing that. I want to do this as well. You don't know what it takes to get there. You don't even know if they're there. That's one of the things I tend to talk to people as it relates to multi-level marketing, right? You will hear a person stand on stage and they're going to do the best song and dance that you're going to get for that hour that they're on stage because they're selling. That's what they're doing. And they're selling their product from the perspective of their awareness. So you're motivated, you're amped up, and you're excited. Why? Because you're tapping into their awareness. Their awareness is not the same as yours. Therefore, when you try it, you don't necessarily have success at it because when you were pitched it from another person's perspective, which is also their awareness and their achievements as well, and not necessarily yours. Moving into personal achievements, again, my plight in life is not the same as Uncle Junior's. It's not the same as Roland's. It's not the same as Chris. It's not the same as Gaddy's. But what people tend to do is we look at another person's achievements and then we experience success. I mean, we experience depression, we experience anxiety, especially if we grew up together, especially if we went to school together. Get out another person's lane, get out their life. You don't know what their calling is, you don't know what their purpose in life is. You need to be more concerned about what you are destined to doing as opposed to that. So when you look at the how is simple. It has the ability to be negative or positive. But the best part about it is you get to choose. So I think that's all great. I want to make sure I'm grabbing some points here. So I think, yeah, that this is a list point. The media and social comparison, this is sad because that is what damages kids nowadays terribly. Absolutely. I agree 100%. But I also want to look at it from the other side of it as well, because there's a lot of great information that's coming from social media these days, and it is actually empowering people if they look at it from that perspective. So I think that's great. I don't think you compare yourself. I think she was talking to you, Uncle Junior, when you was talking about David Goggins. She was saying that you don't
Yeah.
compare yourself, you use him as inspiration. And I agree. That's exactly what you described. Lisa said the question Individual sense of self-worth comes from various influences. My greatest influence are spiritual and personal influence. I choose based on my value share. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that because we're going to talk about that here coming up. It's hard to see other people in your peer group reach goals that seem to be the expectation or standard for certain ages. It's hard to compare when you see the facade of a perfect life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me move to the second question. I got to drink some water. Excuse me. All right. So we're moving on to point number 3. Again, thank you guys for all of your points that you're bringing to the table. And again, if I missed you in the chat, Queen V, I think I did see you. So welcome to the show. If I missed you in the chat, it wasn't intentional. It's just that we're trying to make sure that we get going here and do not leave anything unturned. Treehouse Entertainment, excuse me, DJ Vapors, the GOAT Experience. Welcome to the show. Good to see you. And so, yes, absolutely. Now, that takes us to key point number 3, which is understand which, keep continuing with key point number 3, understanding which factors influence my self-worth. That takes us down to what is known as imposter syndrome. Now, I think imposter syndrome is important to understand because if you don't understand, if you never experienced it, then you're going to it's going to kind of be eye-opening here. So that being said, imposter syndrome, I'm going to let the definition flow and I'm just going to baseline the understanding. Imposter syndrome is simply you get into the point to where you feel like someone is going to discover that you're a fraud. So if you have a job and you don't feel that you're good at that particular job right now, you have this anxiety that kind of puts in your mind that eventually people are going to look at you and say, how did this person get this job? They're not qualified for this job. They shouldn't even be here. And they are a fraud. And this kind of goes back to the other perspective we talked about previously, which is the inflated persona. So with that being said, how can imposter syndrome impact the individual's sense of self-worth?
Listen, I said this last time. Can you hear me? Okay.
No, Roland was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Imposter syndrome is the same way as saying you lying about what you are. So if you know you lying about what you are, there's a pit in your stomach that'll tell you, man, you lying. And then you're going to feel that every time you say something in regards to the identity that you think you're portraying when really you're this. And people will find out anyway. And then when they find out you lying about what you are, and they find out you've been doing all of this stuff that ain't really what you are, they're going to shun you. So now you're going to feel like you can't be around nobody. You understand what I'm saying? Now you're going to feel like don't nobody want to be around you because you were lying about what you are.
Can I play coach? Can I play coach for a second? Like, is it because you're lying about what you are, or is it possible that you don't see yourself the way others see yourself? That's how you got the job, and you are just afraid that you might fail because you don't have a good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that, and it's also the fight between who you're trying to become and what your comfort zone is trying to tell you you're supposed to be. You understand what I'm saying? So it's on two different spectrums. I'm saying a lot of people out here are stunting, but then you have a lot of people that are actually changing for the better that might not be qualified for the job, but have other aspects that they can use to make themselves do the job better than the person that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 qualifications lined up right there. You understand what I'm saying? So it's kind of a twofold thing.
Another side to the imposter syndrome would be, I guess, where Tawami was alluding to, that sometimes you've put in the work, yet you don't even think you deserve to be where you are. You talk yourself down. You won't allow yourself to receive accolades for something that you've worked for because of the inner you that says somebody beat you down enough when you were younger to say you don't deserve it. So now in your head, I really don't deserve it.
I like it. So can I add a little flavor to this real quick? Is it possible for a person to experience imposter syndrome in the space of relationship?
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Make it make sense.
I think most people. So let's be real. So there's a thing out there now that most people say that women date up, but men date down, right? But there are also moments to where, okay, men might date down, but if I take this shot at this one that I might think is dating up and I get it, there's times that that I can begin to do things or go farther than I normally would and go and do things that I can't maintain because I'm trying to prove that I deserve this level of a woman or whatever, you know. So I think a lot of times you got to be careful, you know, because if you're not being who you are to get her, when you start working at who you are, you find out that you might actually be the imposter. That ain't who you was. I used to have a first son that used to say, "Hey, don't bring home flowers every day if you can't maintain that, because then it's going to become the expectation." So I think a lot of time, you know, so it's very possible. So when you start talking to a chick and you like, yeah, this outside my league, but I'm gonna shoot my shot, and it hit, yeah, the rest on you, bro. I know Chris trying not to. I try to make it mild. I try to make it mild, but I knew that wasn't gonna last long.
Oh man. Nope. Not on this fine Friday evening. Nope.
All right,
The
very
sun
well.
was out today. Nope. We're not doing it today. Nope.
But even when it comes to parenting, relational, when it comes to parenting, if you are a parent and you pour into your children, you allow them to be exposed to things that elevate their thinking, elevate their lifestyle. Sometimes, you know, when you go home, you make yourself small. You almost belittle yourself. Well, it ain't all that. It's not this. My little house, my this, that, and other. When I made a post today talking about I ain't hood no more. I mean, I'm walking around here, and the most hood thing happening around here is somebody leave a trash can in front of the house. And it ain't trash day. That's it. But I can walk around here and say I'm from this and I'm from that, but what's that doing? I think that when it comes to, I think Liz said it's more of an identity issue within self, because when you don't even want to acknowledge your gains, acknowledge your prosperity, because it makes you feel bad simply because you come from lack.
What you got on?
I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the question. A lot of different things have been said about it, different perspectives, different views and stuff. So I was trying to relate it back to being in the military when you kind of get. I know I got promoted. Every time that I got promoted before I was ready. I didn't know the job that I was about to get into. When I became a platoon sergeant, I didn't know what being a platoon sergeant was. So I was kind of wondering how something like that plays into it. As you know, in the military, we get promoted based on potential. You know what I mean? So how does, I'm asking, especially Roland or Coach, because you guys have also retired like me, and you guys have had great talking points thus far on the conversation. So I was really trying to see how this relates to being in the military, because I'm wondering if I was at some point, did I fall victim to this imposter syndrome because of what I was taught. You know, when you become an E5, this is how you act. And I wasn't ready to be an E5, even though I made the points. I thought I was ready, but once I threw them chevrons on, you know, it was the first time they came off within 90 days or so. You know what I mean? I wasn't ready. So it's just, you know, if you guys, either one of you guys could kind of relate this, you know, is it similar? Is it different to some sort of imposter syndrome when it comes to, like I said, the military, when we get promoted on the potential, sometimes, and not necessarily, um, you know, our actions.
I think we all know soldiers that excelled because of their thinking. They knew how to think, so they knew how to go to a board and act. But when it came to pushing soldiers and actually training soldiers and things like that, you're like, this dude is a dirtbag. He's a bum. Yet you had somebody who may not have been in proper shape, may not have been, you know, could lead soldiers. But then that's where you say, man, it's not just one or the other. You got to combine these things to excel. And sometimes you looking at people like, how the heck he get promoted?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to look in the mirror and say, well, why aren't you getting promoted? Or why are you moving backwards? Because I'm like you, I can speak from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you move up, you move back, like Paul Abdul, you know, two
Mhm.
post that back, whatever. So when it comes to, I think the problem is we're always looking at other people's achievements, trying to justify where we are.
Yeah. If I can add to it, keep in mind, imposter syndrome is more so about what I believe, not what I'm able to do, not what my accomplishments are, not my accolades that got me to the point to where I am. It's just that my belief system haven't come full circle to plant me in the seat that I'm sitting in. I still believe that when people actually come around the corner and see me, I believe that as they observe my behavior and my activity and things of that nature, they're going to sense fraudulent behavior. That's my belief system, not my expression. You see what I'm saying? Now, the sad part about this is that you can get to the point to where you start sabotaging what you're currently have in front of you. This is why I brought the whole concept of relationship to the conversation, because a lot of times I think Brother Gaddy said, you know, you go up or go down, whatever that looks like. And I'm not at liberty to discuss what, what venue that looks like. But whatever it looks like, based upon an achievement of relationship, an accomplishment of relationship, you may not necessarily believe in your heart of hearts that this relationship that you have right now, you may not necessarily believe that you are worthy of that particular relationship. Therefore, your behavior at that particular point in time becomes self-sabotaging. So you start behaving in such a way that does not honor the relationship that you're in. You behave in such a way that you don't honor the job that you have. You behave in such a way that you do not honor the position that you're in at said particular point in time, simply because you believe you're not supposed to be there.
Can I add something?
But if,
Go
okay,
ahead. Go ahead, Timothy. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say, because if we're honest, you know, because it go back a little bit to that social, not comparison, but influence, right? Because sometimes we see people on TV, they get a promotion and they go in there with this confidence and they own it, and we think that that's what it's going to be like when we achieve something. But if we're honest and real, I think when you get promoted to a position you've never been in, there's always going to be that level of fear if I belong there, because you've never been there. And it's until you start to achieve at that thing that you'll start to be like, okay, I got this. I can move in this space.
Yeah. Let me add to this. Here we go, Chris. Last year, KS, right? Kevin Samuels. When he was hot the other year, so a lot of guys gravitated towards his content, and a lot of guys started understanding their worth or their value, right? High value man was a term that was used frequently, even though he didn't come up with the term. It was something that he used yada yada yada. And I think what happened was when some men started understanding their value or their worth, they, first of all, his message mainly was for like the top 20% earners and men. So everybody, his message wasn't necessarily for them. So some men were giving themselves a inflated sense of self-worth, and now they're like very angry and they're not understanding why they're not getting, certain women and certain different things like this. And I think it's because they swung to the other side. They understand that they may have a little bit more value or something like that, or more worth as a person. However, it's in a negative way, and they're using that to say, well, to demand certain things from women and different things like that, and they're not looking at it from a balanced perspective. And I think, like I said, it has caused some men to have an inflated value, or an inflated sense of self-worth, just because of they've launched onto a certain talking point and they're just running with it. So that's how, to bring all of this to social media and all of those things come back. I think that sometimes it can be a negative thing when we launch onto something and just run with it. What do you think, Chris? There's a lot of angry men and angry red pill men.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, there are a lot of dudes that are angry. There are also a lot of dudes that actually missed the whole message that Kevin was actually trying to share.
Yeah.
His message was bottom line, simple: be useful. That's what it was. Yes, he made that buzz phrase big, and yes, he put a money component to it, but the money component was first. But everybody forgot about the rest of it. The money is a tool. Be useful. You got to be useful to people outside of who you with. You got to be useful to people outside of yourself. And that's why a lot of men out here really are out here that really don't have the type of self-worth that they think they're supposed to have, even though they have the money component together. It's because they're not useful to the people outside of their network. You're supposed to be useful to people outside of your network and in your network. You're supposed to have a network of high value men and other people. It's not about money. It's about what can you do to help this dude over here that you can help. What can you do to help that girl over there who just had a kid and the dude bailed out on her because he didn't want the kid, or he bailed out on her because she's making his life miserable because he don't want her, but he want to take care of his kid? What do you do in that situation? It ain't about money and it ain't about getting girls. It's about who can you help. And that's why a lot of these dudes out here are upset, because they're not getting the type of play that they think that they're supposed to get. You're not helping nobody. You're not doing nothing. You're not showing your work. And when you're not showing your work and can't nobody actually see what you're doing, but you want this specific thing, you start to think, dang, what am I doing wrong? Or what's wrong with them that they can't see what I'm worth? You understand what I'm saying? Put some work in. That's really, that was the message. Put some work in, be disciplined, have integrity, have morals, and have ethics. That was his message.
I love it. I love it. All right. So Michelle says, understanding how to be authentic, how to be the authentic self. A person can be challenging to those that always live as a pretender because of where they lived or lineage of their family. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Wait, I think I missed a question. Would you consider imposter syndrome the same mentality as fake it until you make it? I think that's kind of maybe not purely, but maybe, right? Because you got to realize it's not so much as them faking it because they don't belong there. It's them belonging there. They have the accolades to be there. They just don't believe they should be there. And they think over time that somebody is going to discover that they're a fraud. So I want to make sure I'm saying that. What happened?
I'm like, I know somebody like that.
Oh man, stop it! Everybody knows somebody like that.
Like
Here's the-
I just looked at it again. I'm just like, hold up, hold the phone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can come from a whole
Yes,
different
sir.
point of view now, but I ain't.
Yes, sir. We know. So moving along.
Move right along.
Moving along. Listen, Aristotle had a thing, right? He came up with a perspective, and he said that all good friendships, I'm gonna say relationships, period. He said all good friendships fit in one of three categories. They are either friendships based on utility. Let me stop that. Friendships based on utility, right? Friendships based on pleasure, or friendships based on virtue. Again, he said friendship, I say relationships. So what do they mean? So utility is all about some sort of use. So in essence, you have a relationship to where you guys use one another for a thing. A lot of times when it comes down to this type of relationship, the using only go one way. I hate to say it that way, but in most cases, that's what it looks like. On the other hand, when you have friendships based on pleasure, right? Get your mind out of the gutter, people. This is all about creating positive memories, right? So you guys go to parties, you go on cruises, you do all of those other things. And then second, and lastly, you have friendships based on virtue. These are deep, meaningful relationships to where you generally have the same belief system, and it is literally like a self-licking ice cream cone. Like it's symbiotic in nature, and you literally, I know a lot of people laugh when I say that. It's symbiotic in nature, and you two feed one another. You uplift one another, and you create an environment to where you can grow. That being said, how does Aristotle's perspective on the three types of friendships, utility, pleasure, and virtue, influences our self-worth?
I'm still digesting.
I got to be that rolling.
I say, as am I, because you said a lot right there.
He said Aristotle. That was a lot right there.
Oh my goodness.
By itself, right? Like,
we be in
you want me to
class
comment
over
on
here.
Aristotle?
Yeah, man. Forget Aristotle. Just talk about his point.
But it's his.
It is his. We're not
Nah,
looking
so-
at his life. Go ahead.
So if I take a stab at it, right? Because here's why we all sitting back. Well, I'm assuming here's why I'm sitting back looking. Because does it? Unless you are looking at it from the aspect of I base my value based upon who I'm around. Like, you know, because I know some people say if you hang around millionaires, you'll be a millionaire. You hang around bums, you'll be bums. You'll be a bum. Like I heard that my whole life, but I'm looking at it as, does it really influence my own self-worth of how I view myself? You know, based upon I don't even look at it as even in the aspect of utility, because pleasure, no, because I got friends that do better than me, worse than me, that I go that you know, that either I played ball with, or we just we just kick it, or whatever the case may be. But my self-worth is not really based upon who I'm around. Now, if the people around me, I would say it like this. Now, if the people around me didn't treat me as if I had value to them, then it can start to plague my mind and my psyche. But that's as far as I can personally take it.
I take a stab. You took a stab. I take a stab too. When I used to go home, when I was still in the military, and I used to go home, and I was no longer living in Detroit, but I would go around. Detroit is a city where we like to show what we get. We flashy, gaudy, and all that other stuff. And I had military money. They had dope money. So when they were going, they dropping money here and there, and I'm with them, and they like, oh, I got you this, that, and other. That bruises your ego. It does. When I'm like, God, no, we at the casino, you done lost 10,000, You gave me a $500 chip. I lost 200. I put 3 in the pocket because we on different planes. Now the realization comes, I can't hang out with these people. I can be a leech, but that ain't in my makeup. So now, do I continue to leech, or do I continue to stay, or do I find friends that are on my level, or whatever the relational value is, whether it's a friend that we go on cruises every now and again, and that's the whole gambit of our relationship. It's like, okay, where does it go after that? We can't talk about nothing but another cruise. Or if, all these friends influence you one way or another. And if not, they aren't your friend. If not, why are you around them? They can influence can be good or bad. So whether it's influence of like, man, I need to sit my tail down. I see how he sit at home and he chill and he take her here and do. Friends will influence. I think that we have to not try to put ourselves in one of the 3 boxes to say that's me. No, you can be all 3, but you got to know where you are so you can navigate your own personality traits.
I'm looking at this as I'm seeing balance. All right. So here's my stab at it. Influence. every time we're on the show, every Friday night, we're over here, we're either gaining or we're giving, right? Influence is being shared and passed along just based off of knowledge and based off of information just being shared amongst the men who are on the panel. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the way a person could possibly be influenced in their self-worth is which one of these areas are you giving them a certain amount of time to in each relationship. When you look at your relationships when it comes to utility, are a lot of your relationships based off utility? Are they based off pleasure, virtue, or there's balance across the board with the different people in your life and the different relationships? I think that if you have a lot of relationships that may be in one area, I think that may influence you to be more to whatever goes along with that, your self-worth along with that particular area. So like what I'm saying is that this. So if you say, friends, you have a lot of relationships in your life and they're just based off of pleasure. Well, that may have a lot to do with how you are influenced when it comes to your overall self-worth. Maybe you're a person who just really respond well to relationships that involve pleasure all the time versus ones that their baseline is virtue or utility. So I think kind of to wrap it up, I think it's a balance. Your influence can be persuaded or adjusted in your self-worth based off the amount of time that you spend in different types of these relationships. So I think a lot of it has to do with balance. And I could be way off, but that's my stab at it.
I don't want to say anybody's way off. I think it's good to create balance in this question first. So I'm gonna go there first because when we start talking about utility, this is where you view people as a resource. I want to make sure I'm stressing that you view someone else as a resource. So in essence, you're viewing them beneath their self-worth. That's just really what it is. You only go to them when you need something. To where sure relationships should be of some use, but that should not be the sole purpose of the relationship, right?
Thanks for clearing it up.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
So friendships here based on pleasure, right? I'm sorry. You ever seen the movie White Girls when they was riding in the car and Terry Crews started singing that song? This is the first thing that comes to mind when I hear this. When I see this phrase, like
Making
this
my
is
way down.
yeah, that song right there. I wasn't gonna sing it. No, Gaddy. No. See,
I'll clear your throat.
don't do it. But listen, that's the first thing that comes to mind when I see this, because these are the living your best life people, right? Again, wherever a person is, I'm okay with that. But again, that can't be the sole purpose of our existence. If the only time you call me is when you want to go someplace, or you want to catch a flight someplace, or you want to go out the country someplace, or whatever that looks like, we have to have more meaning. And the virtue, to me, is where it's at, because these are the relationship that feeds the authentic nature of both people, right? So we have meaningful conversations. We have conversations that are empowering and uplifting for both people. Now, here's the beauty of it. People who focus on this type of relationship, they can do this and they can do this, because this is the focus. If this is the focus, it won't last long before the other person realizes all you're doing is using them. If this is the focus, it won't last long once the other person realizes that there has to be more to life than simply just packing our bags and going someplace else. So I think this is important to understand, because if we don't necessarily focus on virtue when it comes to people, we never get a glimpse at the real authentic nature or the self-worth. And here's the reality of the truth. How I view myself is how I treat you. I want to make sure I'm saying that again. So as I develop a better perception of my self-worth, I treat you more valuable. So in essence, when you want to understand when you want to understand how a person views themselves, look at how they treat other people. This is the same thing I talk about in the Christian community. Like, you've never seen God, so you can't tell me how much you love him, but I can look at you and tell you how much you love him based upon the love that you have for people. So therefore, if this is my focus, right, then you only view God as a resource. If this is my focus, then you only view God as a source of quote unquote happiness, which in essence is the clear view of reality minus expectations. I'm just going to throw that out there real quick. So I want to make sure I say that, but all great points. I don't think there was a wrong answer to gain in there. I think this question was just simply all about awareness, which takes us to the last point real quick, which is all about personal values and beliefs. That said, how do personal values and beliefs shape an individual's sense of self-worth? I think I kind of said it already. So I'm not going to insult your guys' intelligence by having you to go back and repeat the same thing I've said. However, in what ways do societal, cultural, and systemic factors contribute to the struggle of marginalized groups in recognizing and asserting their self-value? I am muting my mic on that one.
Ooh.
Y'all petty, first of all, but go ahead, Chris.
In what way do societal, cultural, and systemic factors contribute to the struggle of marginalized? You know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know, and that's only because I've removed myself from all of that. Like, society is going one way. Don't attack me for this, but our culture as a whole that's being represented is trash, and I don't believe in systemic factors contributing to my self-worth, because I can do whatever I want to. You understand what I'm saying? Nothing is stopping me from doing anything. That's just how I think. I think all of those things contribute to the victim mentality that we have in our community. We want to be victims. We want to blame somebody else for not being where we are instead of going and doing what we want to do anyway. Nothing is stopping you. Nothing. It is all, to me, it's all in your head. Once you pull yourself off of the internet and actually dive into what you want to do, you'll be able to see that you can do it and nobody is going to be in your way. In fact, you may come across people that'll help you do it. How do you think I got here? You understand what I'm saying? So I don't know. And like I said, the reason why I'm saying that is because I've removed myself from all of that. I stopped watching everybody else. I stopped thinking about what everybody else is doing. I stopped looking at what everybody else is doing, because most of the time, like I said earlier, they're posting it on social media and it's a highlight reel of what their real life looks like. Because if you strip down all of that, you will see that they really ain't what they portray on the internet, or it took a whole hell of a lot of work for them to get there. I'm out the way.
So, in what ways do the societal, cultural, and systemic factors contribute to the struggle and marginalized groups in recognizing and asserting their self value? I think it can stunt them asserting their self value. I think that when you start off at a certain age and you're being pumped, or I was use that word, with certain amount of information, um, I think what happens is it creates a sense or a mindset that there is no way out and that I'm stuck here. So I think that what happens is you are not willing to assert anything. You're not willing to assert your self value or really find out who you are. And sometimes it's due to no fault of people's own doing. You know what I mean? Especially early on in life. If you've been told, you know what I mean, one thing your entire life, that, you know what I mean, some systemic factor or some systemic system out there is the cause and the reason why grandma didn't make it, and the reason why granddaddy didn't make it, and the reason why mama didn't make it, and the reason why daddy ran out, and the reason why, you know, your big brother didn't graduate high school. If you have been taught that your whole entire life, your mindset is that there is no way out. So how do you come from up under that? And it can be very challenging for people. So I think those things being pumped into you your entire life can create, you know, the stagnant part of your life where you're not willing to assert anything and really figure out your self value.
Dwan?
I wanted to make sure you wanted me to go first, sir. So I'm gonna leave a lot of meat on the bone for you, because you got this. So, all right, let me dissect before I dive in. Right, in what ways do societal factors, right? Societals, I will first say, society plays a factor based upon multiple things: your geographical location and your view of success based upon what's around you or what you see around you, right? Or your ability to keep up. Sometimes people will base it off of that. So, I think society can give you a false sense of not just what your self-value is, but should be, because it's based upon what's around you and who's around you. Cultural, right, I think becomes the problem. So I'm gonna skip cultural because that's a problem, because it's tied to systemic factors, right? If you notice, whenever we talk about Black folks and success, right? Because who's more marginalized throughout history than us in America, right? And I hear all the stuff everybody's saying about everybody else, but that's all right, because if you look at the census, we actually still to this day suffer more hate crimes than any group. But see, look at the devil. Look at the devil in my kid. There we go.
He done said that was the devil.
but somehow, some way, we have commercials and everything else and laws that are implemented in less than 90 days for other groups, but we still suffer hate violence and hate crime. But I dissect. I digress on that part, right? But when you look at systemic, you have to say simply, and if you were not, and I don't say this to be mean, right? Before I say it, but I say this to be real. If you were not born in any aspect of the diaspora of the Africans from the transatlantic slave trade, you really cannot put yourself in this mix. Because I get a lot of people from that are African that said, well, I'm not oppressed. Or I get a lot of people from China say, well, my parents came as immigrants and I'm not oppressed. Yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. But being here, my entire 37 years of life, there's never been anything systematically that has said this is who you are. And this is what your culture looks like. Other than movies telling us that we were gangbangers and drug dealers and dope fiends. So when we talk about systemic, we have to look at it from that aspect. Systemically, it has been, and I understand where Chris went with this, but history tells me you have tried for over 250 years to make sure that I couldn't have generational economic success. I couldn't own property. I couldn't do fair business. And because of that, we now coming back. Now here we are, and we're saying, well, none of that stuff matters no more. And you're just supposed to figure it out for yourself. So, and I'm trying to leave a lot of meat on the bone so my brother can go. But half the problem comes with you can't keep lying to people about who they are and expect them to become a people. That is really the problem. Yeah, onesies and twosies are making it and doing something with themselves, but what about the culture? What about the people? What about the neighborhood? Why? And I'm gonna ask this question, and y'all can answer it in whoever. But why, when Black people become successful, we got to make it out? Why everybody else making it together, but we got to make it out? That should answer enough for the question right there. I'm gonna leave that alone.
I'm glad I went last. That way I don't have to say much. I start from the back and work my way forward, because I start with the systematic. In our country, every fabric, every system is set up not just against Black people, Tuwami, but against poor people. It's to maintain a sense of poor and wealth. Now, other people have had the ability to maintain their cultures. That's the very difference in us, and that's why, like, they won't even talk about reparations and all that other stuff, because they're not going there, because at the end of the day, you're still property, period. And they can say whatever they want to say. That's why they make sure they give you a social security number. Whether you use a social or EIN number, whatever, you have to use something to identify yourself so that they can tax you, so that they can say you are property and you work for me. So your earnings come back to us at the end of the day. Now, when it comes to how it can deal with your self-value, when you aren't allowed to purchase, when you aren't allowed to live certain areas, when you aren't allowed to do these things, when you're controlled, you start to get used to being controlled. And when you start to get used to being controlled, you may find twos and fews who get out, or twos and fews who they put above, so that they can say, well, look at Oprah, look at Obama, look at these people, as if that's the norm, when it's not the norm. Anytime you can say, look at this person, or this is the first of your kind to do this, that means there's a problem that you don't want to identify. You just want to sugarcoat it and pussyfoot around it and act like this is the cream of the crop and they ascertain more than everybody else. No, it's a lot of figureheads that they place in this country to manipulate the masses. And when it comes to, we always say, well, we can't be it unless we see it. So they allow you to see certain things. But the majority of what the system shows you about yourself, as in people of color and poor people, is poor white people. They try to say all poor white people live in the trailer park. All poor Black people wear hoodies and walk around just calling each other B's and N-words and these sorts of things. So it establishes a mindset in the collective body, not just in you, in the collective body. So now, as a whole, collective body say, man, I'm scared of black people. Then black people say, well, I don't want to live around them either. And so the self-value is not just for me, because I know me and I know where I come from. So I can be one person, but I have to be able to affect multiple people around me to change the mindset, change the thinking, change the education system. Like I say, every system needs to change, but the change got to start with me, got to start with you, so that you won't see through the eyes of the system. And then we can start to bring our children up to where they aren't relying on the system. They're self-reliant. They aren't defiant because of the system, but they recognize it. And when you recognize it, you can get above it.
Agreed. Absolutely. This is why I made this the last talking point, because I knew it was going to be a very long explanation, and I'm agreeing, especially everything you just said, Roland. I think when we look at it from a clear perspective, what you'll see is that all of these things, especially when you take a step back, you will see a majority of everything that you say just like that. And so for me, I want to go back to what I said in the beginning before I put this question up, because it was a setup question, Gaddy, like you said, right? Happiness is all about having a clear perspective of reality minus expectation. That's where you find happiness at. I can't, if I can't get a clear perspective of reality, which means I need to have a general sense of my history, then I am only going to be one-sided. And if I'm only one-sided, I'm not being completely authentic for everybody as a whole. Sure, it may work for me, but what about these people? What about if I go to help these people? I can't use the good news messages for people who are stuck in a system and don't see a way out. So great explanation. I greatly appreciate that. And again, it's not a shot at anybody. I want everybody to understand that this was just something I wanted to bring to the table, because this helps us to understand why some people struggle with their self-worth when they're brought up in an area to where all they see is doom and gloom. Then it's not foreign for that doom and gloom to translate itself into adult behavior as they move forward. So great responses. And that being said, this is a bittersweet moment for me, because it is always like that when we move into our final thoughts. With that being said, we're going to start with Still the Angry Guy, right? Brother Chris, take it away.
Damn right. Okay. I'm gonna start with just self-worth itself. Self-worth is just that. Self-worth. Nobody else can give that to you. You have to go get it yourself. It's gonna take a lot of hard work. You're gonna hit some bumps in the road. You're gonna have a bunch of setbacks. But as long as you just keep moving, keep accomplishing, keep being useful, you will be fine. There's nothing holding you back. You have the world in the palm of your hand. Go do something. That's my final thought.
Whew. Yeah, so much was said. It's hard to piece up everything together. But I would say, when it comes to self-worth, I think most times we see ourselves based on either the goals we set for ourselves or the lives that others project to the world. And I say project because most often the happiness you think someone has is not always as happy as it seems. I heard someone put it this way, the grass might even be greener on the other side, but someone has to keep up the lawn, right? So that don't come with the value of who they are. That comes with the work that they put forth, right? So that's why I use that term project. So I think that when you know who you are and aspects of how do you give value back to your family and your community, or some people would say what you were called to be, when you can understand that, then you base your value based upon what you give, based upon who you are, not based upon how someone else will view you, because there will always be someone that looks down on what you have to offer. All right. So when it comes to us looking at ourselves or having a value for ourselves, I think that it's important that, especially as a community, as a people, we have to learn how to grow together, how to link with people that as I grow, I can help you grow. And we start building people that look like us and look like our children and look like our nieces and nephews, and they see themselves through the lens of seeing someone that looks like them be successful without, of course, having to have a talent like playing the sport, singing, or acting. Then our self-worth as a community, because that's really the goal. It's not just for you to be better, but for you to be better to help make someone else better. That's my final thought today.
All right, so I was taking a little bit of notes, and I'm just going to leave you guys with this final thoughts. This last 2 weeks has been focused on the keys to knowing your self-worth. So just anybody, if you hadn't checked out the first one, I know Coach will probably mention, but go back and check out the first episode from last week. But here's my 4 keys to knowing your self-worth. One is to learn to say no. I think it's important that we set boundaries within ourselves at work, in our relationships, personal, and with our wolf pack or with whoever we come in contact with. I think it's okay to set boundaries. So learn to say no sometimes. Number 2 is to practice self-compassion. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. That's just part of the journey. It's not, you don't sit there and soak in it forever. You know what I mean? Give yourself a certain amount of space or a certain amount of time to deal with whatever you're going through, and then keep it moving after that. You have to be able to put that behind you and move forward if you want to move forward. So number 3 is to seek feedback and support. Surround yourself with people. Go to mentors, go to friends and people that you trust with information, and seek feedback and support from them and help them, because sometimes other people can see where we may get off the path a little bit, or someone may need to hold us accountable for something that we may be going through or something that we may be trying to accomplish. So I think it's important to get good feedback from other people that are within our circle. And lastly, but not least, is to challenge negative self-talk. We talked about energy not too long ago, I think on another show, but I think it's important for people, and because sometimes people can be around you and they can portray a certain amount of energy or high energy, but it could really be draining. It could really be sucking from you. So I think, like I said, is and what comes with that is challenging that negative self-talk within yourself and different things like that. So those are my 4. I run them down again. Learn to say no, practice self-compassion, seek feedback and support, and challenge negative self-talk.
Man, I love it. Everything that they just said. I'll just leave you with knowledge is power. Knowing self. You cannot have self-worth unless you know who you are. No, you don't have to know every gambit of where you come from and all these things, because we're still searching, we're still growing. But know who you are. Simply knowing your name, nah. Knowing the system, nah. Knowing the culture, no. You got to know everything. So always be seeking knowledge so that you can know yourself, know the system, know how it works, so that you can work contrary to it. Because when you work contrary to the system, you realize, man, I'm working to benefit me and not just benefit the system. And then never allow other people who are trying to separate you from thinking or being around people that think differently than everybody else. When you think differently, it's for a reason. When you're learning about yourself, when you're growing and you find yourself around those people, don't allow people on the outside to splinter your relationship so that they can turn you against one another. Because when they can separate you, they can defeat you. But when you come together, you're more powerful. So knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep growing, and learn everything it is about everything that you need to and want to know. That's it.
Man, I'm gonna keep this simple, real quick. Self-reflection is the key, right? Make sure that you're self-reflecting so that you can avoid the inflated persona. Make sure that you're self-reflecting so that you don't fall victim to the self-worth theory, to where you believe that your self-worth is based upon doing. Avoid task-based living and spend more time trying to be. You are a human being, not a human doing. When you can do that, then you can avoid experiencing cognitive dissonance. That's important to understand. Also, you can also avoid imposter syndrome as well. Last point, make sure that you self-reflect so that you can actually make sure that you self-reflect so that you can ensure to have a clear understanding of the factors that influence your self-worth. And within the scope of that, focus on having relationships that are based upon virtue. So that being said, again, on behalf of these gentlemen, I want to make sure I say thank you to each and every last one of you. Antoine, good to see you, brother. I'm sorry I missed you. But listen, we appreciate each and every last one of you. So again, same time, same channel, same date next week, right? We're going to finish out this whole concept of self-worth, and we're going to get after that whole identity piece that Roland was just talking about. So with that being said, on behalf of these gentlemen, you guys have a wonderful night and a great rest of your weekend, and go finish looking at the Masters. It's good.